Hello and welcome to another episode of Cascadia Mountain Weather. It's Friday, October 10th, and we're looking at the first big snowfall of the season coming up. So what do we got going, Wyatt?
Yeah, so even though we're in October, we are starting to see kind of those first signs of winter showing up in the forecast, and it's going to happen this weekend. So, this is looking at a picture of Washington Pass up in the North Cascades, a very popular place for people to go larch hunting from a couple years ago, and with just a snow squall moving through. And this is maybe some of the kind of scenes that we'll see this weekend, but we'll probably end up seeing significantly more snow than we have in the last couple of years. So let's get into it. Right now, this is just looking at the current radar, the precipitation moving through. Here's our Washington state, and we've seen some showers throughout the day in the Seattle area and through Western Washington. Right now, the snow level is still pretty high, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But just kind of, we'll see this on and off showers in the lowlands with decently heavy precipitation up in the mountains. So let's go into it. We're going to look at two different models. And this right now that I'm kind of moving back through. So this is currently kind of the forecast in 6 hour increments for our European model showing precipitation. So we can see Washington right here, which we've zoomed into a little bit. And these are these showers that we're seeing moving through. If we jump back to here, we can see this band of precipitation, which is showing up on our model right here. This is through 5 p.m. today. And as we go through overnight tonight, the showers will kind of wind down a little bit. But we'll start to see some heavier precipitation building up towards the north of Seattle and in the northwest Cascades. Mostly along the crest and on the east side, it should be relatively dry for this early portion of Saturday. But then we're going to start to see kind of a front push in and move some of that precipitation more into both western Washington to the south, but also eventually making it across the Cascades. So this is Saturday. And then as we go into Sunday, so this is looking kind of the 6 hour period ending 11 a.m. on Sunday. You can see the time in kind of the upper corner of this map. You'll see some pretty heavy precipitation up in this area in the North Cascades. And this is mostly going to be falling as snowfall. And this goes through the evening on Sunday before clearing out as we get into Monday. So we can look at another kind of maybe a little bit easier to see, a little bit higher resolution model. So once again, here are the showers moving through on Friday. Let me kind of scroll this up or move this a little bit. And as we move through the day into Saturday, you'll see once again this concentration towards the north. Now, keep in mind that if you are thinking about going out to the Larches this weekend, which is generally in this area here, kind of in the North Cascades along the crest at the eastern boundaries of Whatcom, Skagit, and Snohomish counties, you can see that this is through kind of evening tonight, so there'll be some rain out there. And as we get into early Saturday, won't be too showery, but as we push through the day Saturday, you'll see that clouds will increase if it wasn't already cloudy before, and we'll have some light showers, maybe even snow showers moving through. As we move into Sunday, we get this heavier band of precipitation. This is now 8 a.m. Sunday, and this will spread throughout kind of the entire North Cascades and bring decently heavy snowfall. So we'll get to that in a second, but just looking in precipitation amounts, this is a decent amount in terms of maybe an inch to two, maybe even 3 inches of water equivalent falling in the North Cascades. And then as we move through Sunday night into Monday, that eventually fades out. So this is mostly going to be falling as snow, especially on Sunday, because our snow level is dropping. During the day on Friday, it was kind of in the 8,000 foot range, but decreasing as we continued along. As we get into early morning Saturday, which is right here, this first line, you'll see that's hanging about 6,000 feet. So Saturday, if you're above 6,000 feet, you'll probably be seeing snow if there's any precipitation. If you're below 6,000 feet, you might see a mix of snow and rain. And if you're below about 4,000 to 5,000 feet, you'll likely just see rain. But as we move through the day, in Saturday and especially into Sunday, you can see the snow level dropping all the way down to about 4,000 feet, and it might even get a little bit lower, maybe 3,500. This is for the North Cascades, the upper Skagit drainage, so the area that really has a lot of larches. And we can see quite a bit of precipitation. So this is in millimeters, but we'll see what this means in terms of snowfall. And then this does show that after kind of Monday, that precipitation ends and we are going to see a warming trend and a raising of the snow level. So let's bump through here. This is looking at kind of estimated snowfall amounts. And so this is going through Friday night. There's going to be some snow, once again, falling kind of in that 6,000 foot range, 6 to 7,000 feet, which is shown along the crest right here. As we get into Saturday morning, you can see the snow starting to spread down as our snow level begins to drop a little bit. This is Saturday afternoon, about 2. Not a ton falling there, not a ton of accumulations, but you'll definitely see some snow in the air. Then as we get into Sunday morning, this is really where that snowfall is going to pick up. So you can see this big band that we were looking at earlier. This is where we're going to see that really heavy snowfall rates. And for an idea, if we zoom in a little bit right here, this is that Highway 20 Washington Pass corridor. So this little band where there's not a lot of snow, this is the lower elevation, and you can see that in this area right here, this is through 8 p.m. Sunday. It looks like the models are forecasting maybe kind of anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit more, especially if this band sets up elsewhere. And the other places with larches are also likely going to see pretty heavy snowfall during this time frame as well. And as we get into the end of Sunday and into Monday, you can see that it really picks up kind of. Ultimately, I think we'll probably see anywhere from 6 inches at the 5,000 foot level, maybe 3 to a foot, or even 18 inches at some of the upper elevations. And then one more glance at just kind of a different model looking at the snow. Here's Highway 20, once again, this Washington Pass area, and you can see that this is kind of predicting kind of that 6 to 12 inches that we were just talking about, especially through the beginning of next week. In terms of temperatures, once again, bringing up Washington Pass, because that is a spot that a lot of people like to go for larches. You can see that kind of tonight and Saturday, that rain-snow mix, and then as that snow level drops below pass level's at 5,400, snow level is going to drop below 4,000. We see some heavy snow moving in, once again, this is kind of, if we go for the maximum level on this point forecast, it could be upwards of a foot. One final thing I want to mention about our weather is the winds. It actually doesn't look too windy this weekend. Monday looks like the windiest day. So this is looking at kind of accumulated max gusts. These green areas are generally in kind of the 20 to 30 mile an hour range. And that's like, those would be kind of rare. So imagine that there'll be some wind out there that will make it feel even colder, especially with our temperatures at past levels being kind of in the mid 20s to low 30s, and up higher might not even break out of the 20s. And then as we go into Monday, you can see that the winds are going to pick up a little bit, and that will be more into kind of the 30, maybe even with gusts to 40 along the ridge line. So be aware that if you are kind of taking advantage of a longer weekend, it will likely be windier up there even as it clears out into Monday.
So now we're going to take our first look at seasonal snowpack trends. Now it's very early, just still early October, but we're going to look at some snowtail data. So this is just a map of the different snowtail sites. This doesn't mean anything about depth or anything. We're going to take a look at Rainy Pass, which is about 4,800 feet on Highway 20. And so this is the typical over many years, like the different snowpack depths from October to November. And you can see that the green line is the median. And the green line really doesn't start growing much until the first week of November. So the median is almost no snow until the first week of November, and then it starts to grow steadily. However, there have been some years where, we can get in mid to late October, 1 to 2 inches of snow water equivalent. From a big storm, and it might linger, it might melt away. And so, through this weekend, we might get an inch of snow water equivalent up a Rainy Pass, which could translate when compressed, to 6 to 8 inches of snow or so. So we could see that, but don't expect any significant snowpack to linger or really grow until generally the 1st of November. This is a picture from last weekend from Wyatt's trip out into that area. And it was interesting to see there's a little bit of fresh snow, surprise fresh snow. It was interesting to see how the larches actually were still a bit green. And that seems to be unusual for October 4th, 5th. So it seems like they're, anywhere from half a week to a week behind what is typical. So, the weather is certainly very challenging this weekend, but we probably will be seeing the largest turn peak gold through the next few days. So there's been a lot of fire activity. Thankfully, we haven't seen it reach down into the towns of Wenatchee and Kashmir at all, but there's also a lot of closures to be aware of. So there's the one interesting note is the Pomus fire here, which had been burning since May, hasn't really been burning much in the last month or two. And the Forest Service actually just finally lifted the closure of the Chihuahua River Road. So previously, it was this entire area from Lake Chelan to Lake Wenatchee. And now it's really just the Entiat. And so the Chihuahua River Valley, which is home to some popular hikes up Phelps Creek and such, that is now open again, which is often to see, but definitely like that area is expected to get a lot of snow this weekend, so be very careful if you're trying to go up into the Alpine in that area. If we go back to the fire map, there's a few other notable fires causing closures. So down to the south, we have the Sugarloaf Fire, which has closed off a large amount of area between like north of Wenatchee. And then it's not showing the outline of the Labor Mountain fire, but virtually all of the core Teanaway, a lot of it has been burned. And Blewett Pass, the fire burned across Blewett Pass within the last few weeks, and the road is open for driving, but basically all recreation is closed around this area. So please don't try to go do a bike ride or hike, but it is open to car traffic.
Well, one final thing we want to talk about is going into the winter and the long-term predictions. So this looks like a graph, and it is a graph, but this is really talking about our ENSO state, or you might be more familiar with the idea of El Nino and La Nina. So generally, in the Pacific Northwest, El Nino, not great for us. Usually not very cold temperatures, not as much precipitation, very bad for mountain snowpack. Last year, we were in right around neutral, if a weak La Nina. And we had some bouts of decent snow, but honestly, we ended up having not great snowfall, even though normally in La Nina tends to be a little bit better for snowfall. It looks like we're going to be in a similar situation this year. So this is the forecast going out months. And you don't have to know exactly what these numbers mean, but this basically, the general idea is that when we drop below negative 0.5 on this scale right here, we go into that weak La Nina state. The deeper you drop, generally, the better we have for cold and snowfall and mountain snow, especially in the Washington Cascades and the Pacific Northwest. So the forecast shows that it looks like we'll be kind of in that weak La Nina state. We can look at what happened last year. So I'm going to draw your attention to this thing that says Nino 3.4. The other ones we're not going to pay attention to right now. So this is where we were last year around this time. We kind of bumped up and down throughout the winter, but we were generally in kind of in this negative area that generally coincides with a La Nina state, and we seem to be heading back down there again this time this year. So what that exactly means for this year is uncertain, but generally with La Nina we have cooler conditions and better chances for mountain snowfall. So maybe we'll get lucky and have a better snow year than we did last year. And then looking out longer, or kind of in the next couple of weeks, no real clear signal. It looks like we will start to see precipitation storms coming in. We are in kind of approaching mid to the end of October already, and so that's really when our storm trains begin to ramp up. And it does look like temperatures maybe, especially across the west, will be below normal, but it's a little bit uncertain exactly what that will look like in Washington.
Well, thanks to everyone for listening, and we hope you have an enjoyable weekend.